The night everything snapped looked ordinary from the outside. It was just another Sunday dinner at my parents' house, the same faded tablecloth, the same overcooked roast, the same background hum of the TV no one was really watching. I was in my mid-20s, sitting at the kitchen table in my usual spot, across from my golden child sibling, while my parents circled like they always did, my dad quiet, my mom narrating her martyrdom. She had a utility bill in her hand, waving it around like a prosecutor with a smoking gun. "No one appreciates how much I do," she said for the third time, her voice already rising. "These bills are killing us. Killing me." I glanced at the paper and noticed the total didn't match what she'd texted me earlier that week. I kept my voice calm. "Mom, I already transferred my share on Tuesday. Remember? And this number looks off. Can I see?" That was as far as I got. She slammed the bill down so hard the salt shaker jumped. "If you're so smart, then pay your own bills," she shouted. The room went dead silent. My siblings stared at their plate. My dad looked at his hands. My mother's eyes were locked on me, daring me to push back. She kept going, piling on the usual insults, that I was arrogant, ungrateful, acting like a lawyer, always questioning her. Normally, this was the point where I would shrink, apologize, maybe even offer to send more. But something shifted. The sentence, "pay your own bills," didn't feel like a threat this time. It felt like an opening. Like someone had just cracked a window in a room I hadn't realized was suffocating me. I didn't argue. I didn't defend myself. I just looked at the crumpled bill between us and thought, very clearly, okay, I will. I had no idea, sitting at that familiar table, that those 5 words would be the fault line that split our family's power dynamic wide open, or that learning to pay my own bills would end up costing my mother far more than it ever cost me. To understand why that one sentence hit me the way it did, you have to understand the house I grew up in. It was small and always a little too full of stuff, of noise, of tension. The air smelled like overcooked food and cheap scented candles, an artificial sweetness that never quite covered the bitterness underneath. Love in our house was a performance for other people. Behind closed doors, the main language was criticism. My sibling was the star of that performance. They were the golden child, though no one used those words out loud. AB+ on a test got them a celebration. A painted macaroni picture earned a spot on the fridge for months. When they needed a brand new phone for school, my parents practically sprinted to the store. I still remember watching them peel the plastic off the screen while I scrolled on a cracked hand-me-down, pretending I didn't care. I was the counterweight to all that praise, the difficult one, the too sensitive one. Anytime I asked for something, even basic things, it came with a lecture. At family gatherings, my mother would smile and tell everyone how much my braces had cost, how expensive my school trip was, how many hours she'd had to work so I could apply to college. People would nod sympathetically while I stood there, burning with shame, learning that existing apparently came with a running tab. Money was never just money. It was a leash. If I talked back, my allowance disappeared. If I questioned a rule, suddenly there wasn't room in the budget for new shoes or a field trip. School supplies turned into rewards for good behavior instead of basic necessities. Anytime I worked up the courage to ask for something normal, like going to a movie with friends, my mother would sigh and say, "Do you have any idea what we already spend on you?" Little by little, I absorbed the message. I was expensive. I was a burden. I owed them not just respect, but obedience, silence, and loyalty, no matter how small I felt in my own home. When I left for college, I thought I was finally getting away. I remember standing in my dorm room that first day, staring at the bare mattress and the cinder-block walls, feeling a strange combination of terror and possibility. I didn't know much about money beyond the constant message that I was expensive, so when my mother said she would help manage everything, it sounded like a lifeline. She insisted all the student loan paperwork stay mailed to the house. "Financial aid is complicated," she said. "I'll handle it. You should be grateful I'm even co-signing." The way she said grateful made it clear this wasn't a favor. It was another entry in the invisible ledger of what I owed her. When I opened my first bank account, she demanded online access so I can transfer money when you need it. I agreed because the idea of overdrafting terrified me. It didn't take long for that access to turn into surveillance. If I bought a coffee between classes, I'd get a text. "Must be nice to waste money when we're killing ourselves to keep you in school." If I ordered takeout during midterms, she'd call to ask why I couldn't just eat in the dining hall, like a normal student. Anytime I pushed back, she went straight for the jugular. "If it wasn't for us, you'd be homeless." You're nothing without our support. I started to believe her, even as I watched a very different story play out with my sibling. They got a used car for safety the moment they turned 16, then a monthly gas allowance with no strings attached. No shaming texts about lattes, no lectures about how much they cost. Money for them meant love and freedom. For me, it meant debt, emotional first, financial second. Back then, I told myself this was just what college looked like when your parents helped. I had no idea how much deeper that help would cut later, or how tightly it was already wrapped around my throat. By the time that Sunday dinner rolled around, my life outside their house looked nothing like the version of me my parents liked to describe. I had a modest but steady job, the kind where the paycheck wasn't glamorous but it showed up on time. I shared a small apartment with a roommate who labeled her leftovers and actually meant it when she said, "Help yourself." The bills were tight but manageable, and for the first time, I felt like I was building something that was mine. My friends knew me as the reliable one, the person who remembered birthdays, who showed up early to help move furniture, who picked up shifts when someone else was drowning. They were always baffled when I mentioned my mother still monitoring my accounts or demanding proof of what I spent. "You're the most responsible one here," they'd say, half joking, half serious. One night, we were crowded around our tiny stove cooking cheap pasta, trading stories about landlords and broken appliances. Someone laughed and said, "When I'm really stuck, my mom just sends me money. No lecture, just, I've got you." The room hummed with easy agreement. I smiled, but something in my chest ached. It hit me then how abnormal my version of support was, how it always came with strings, conditions, and a bill attached. The irony was sharp. In every other part of my life, I was capable and trusted. The only place I was treated like a walking disaster was the place that was supposed to feel like home. In the weeks before that explosive Sunday, the whole thing started with what sounded like a small compromise. My mother had insisted I keep a couple of things under the family address because it's easier. The old family phone plan and one lingering student loan she swore she had fronted for me. To keep the peace, I agreed to send her a monthly transfer for my share. It was automatic at that point, just another line item in my budget, like rent or groceries. I sent the money every month on time, without fail. But lately, her complaints had gotten louder. She'd call sighing dramatically about how much your bills are crushing us, as if I'd personally wrapped their house in debt. One afternoon, she texted, "You are bleeding us dry," with a photo of a bill total that didn't sit right in my gut. The number was higher than what she'd told me before, higher than what I thought my portion could possibly be. I stared at the screenshot, doing rough math in my head, feeling a faint buzz of unease I tried to ignore. Then a cousin mentioned seeing my mother at a salon, laughing about paying my siblings marathon entry fees and new vacation clothes, because, thank God the older one is finally helping with the bills. The words landed like a slap. So I was bleeding them dry, but somehow there was money for races, hair appointments, and beach outfits? My payments were apparently a burden in one story and a blessing in another. For the first time, I stopped feeling guilty and started feeling curious. Where was my money actually going? Once the suspicion settled in, it was like an itch I couldn't ignore. One night after work, I sat down at my kitchen table with my laptop and logged into my bank account. I typed "mom bills" into the search bar and watched the screen fill with line after line of transfers. I started adding them up, month by month, year by year, my stomach tightening with each new total. By the time I finished, the number was in the thousands, money I had sent for bills I had never actually seen with my own eyes. For the first time, I called the phone company myself. I gave them my name, my old number, and waited while the hold music played. When the representative finally came back, she sounded cheerful. "Your line was removed from that family plan months ago when you started your own account," she said. "Right now the active lines are for..." She listed my parents and my sibling. I sat there, gripping the phone. I had been faithfully paying my share for a plan I wasn't even on. Next, I dug through old emails until I found the loan servicer information my mother always insisted on handling. I reset the password, logged in, and braced myself. The account wasn't in arrears. It was in good standing, comfortably sitting on an income-based repayment plan. The monthly amount due was significantly lower than what I'd been sending my mother to help. The discrepancy wasn't a rounding error. It was a pattern. Staring at the numbers, something inside me went very still. For the first time in my life, I had proof that the help I'd been so indebted for might have been the con all along. Once I saw the numbers, I stopped treating this like a misunderstanding and started treating it like a paper trail. I went back through years of messages with my mother, screenshotting the guilt-laced texts. You owe us. Without us, you'd have nothing. We're drowning because of your bills. I saved every bank transfer labeled Mom Bills, every blurry photo of statements she'd sent as proof. On my laptop, I created a new folder and, almost laughing at myself, named it Bills Receipts. It felt like a quiet act of rebellion. I showed the folder to a close friend who worked in finance and had done some paralegal work. We sat at my kitchen table while they clicked through everything, their face going from curious to grim. She's inflating the amounts, they said finally. You've been paying more than what's actually due. And that loan. You've overpaid based on what the servicer says. This looks like financial exploitation. The word exploitation landed heavy, but also made everything make sense. I felt nauseous and strangely calm at the same time. It was like someone had finally translated a language I'd been spoken to in my whole life. I realized then that my relationship with my mother had never really been about love or responsibility. It had been about control, measured in dollars and shame. I didn't start planning a dramatic scene. I started planning a clean exit. Take over every bill myself, cut off the money flow, and see what happened when her favorite leash snapped. Once I knew what was really happening, I decided the next Sunday dinner wouldn't be just another performance. It wouldn't be a courtroom showdown either, not yet. It would be my quiet pivot point. In the days leading up to it, I went through every account still tied to my parents' address. I updated billing addresses to my apartment, switched remaining auto payments into accounts only I controlled, and finally revoked my mother's access to my bank. On the emotional side, I did something I'd never done before a family visit. I prepared. I journaled until the anger cooled into clarity. I talked it through with my friend, who reminded me I wasn't crazy or ungrateful. I rehearsed simple sentences in my head. I'll be managing my own bills now. Those are your expenses, not mine. My main rule was simple: no more sending money through her. If she brought up bills, I'd stick to facts and numbers, not feelings. Driving to their house that Sunday, my hands still shook a little on the steering wheel. The familiarity of their street made me feel 12 again, small and guilty. I kept reminding myself of the bank statements, the phone records, the loan portal. This wasn't a mood, it was math. I walked up their driveway, not knowing exactly how the night would go, only that something had already shifted in me. I didn't know she'd hand me the perfect line to walk away on a silver platter. By the time the plates were cleared that night, I could feel the script sliding into place. My mother started with the familiar sighs, the heavy silence, the way she stared at the table as if it personally owed her money. The bills are getting out of control, she said, loud enough for everyone to hear. Some of us don't seem to understand how much this is costing. She pulled out a new paper, a fresh bill she'd folded and unfolded so many times the edges were soft. This is your part, she said, thrusting it toward me. I am at the end of my rope. I took it, but this time I didn't just glance at the total. I read it. I recognized the extra lines, the add-ons with my sibling's name attached. I felt a strange calm settle over me. Can I see the full account statement? I asked. Not just this page. The whole thing. That one question cracked her composure. What, you don't trust me now, she snapped. You think you're some kind of accountant? If you're so smart, then pay your own bills. The words rang in the air, sharp and familiar. Only this time, they didn't land like a threat. They landed like permission. I set the bill gently back on the table. Okay, I said, meeting her eyes. That's exactly what I planned to do. For a second, she actually blinked, thrown off by my agreement. She recovered fast, scoffing. Please. You couldn't survive a month without us. I didn't argue. I just looked at her and thought, she has no idea I've already started. After that dinner, I didn't wait for another fight. I went home and treated my finances like an emergency evacuation. First, I called the phone company and told them I wanted everything in my own name. The representative confirmed again that my line wasn't even on my parents' plan anymore. I set up a completely individual plan and made sure no charges could be routed through them. Next, I logged into the loan servicer and removed every trace of my mother as an intermediary. I updated my contact information, set up direct payments from my own account, and watched as their address disappeared from the profile. I went through every lingering subscription and utility I could think of, streaming services, old apps, anything tied to their house, and updated it all to mine. When it was done, I drafted one short, carefully worded text. Going forward, I'll be managing all of my bills directly. Please don't pay anything on my behalf. I will not be sending you money for shared bills anymore. I attached screenshots from the phone company and the loan servicer as proof. Her response was instant and furious. Message after message about disrespect, betrayal, how I was sticking her with all these bills. I answered once. Those are your bills, not mine. She fired back that she'd tell the whole family how ungrateful I was, how I'd abandoned them after everything they'd done. I recognized it for what it was, another attempt to control the narrative, and me through shame. I muted her notifications and put my phone face down on the table, feeling the first real quiet I'd had in years. It didn't take long for the ripple effect to hit. First it was my aunt, calling me out of nowhere with a wounded tone. I heard you refuse to help your poor parents anymore, she said, as if I'd left them out on the street. Then a cousin messaged, did you really cut your mom off after everything she's done for you? A year earlier, those words would have sent me into frantic explanations and apologies. This time, I treated it like another numbers problem. I replied with short, calm messages. Here's what I was paying every month, I wrote, attaching a screenshot of my transfers. Here's what the actual bills were, followed by the statements. I'm just managing my own bills directly now. Some relatives went quiet after that. You could almost hear the gears turning as they realized the story they'd been told didn't quite add up. Others doubled down, ignoring the proof completely. Family doesn't keep score, one uncle texted, right after listing everything my parents had supposedly sacrificed. That was when it clicked for me. They didn't want the truth. They wanted the story that made them feel comfortable. The family meeting invite came as a command, not a request. My mother texted that we needed to sit down and sort this out like adults, which was ironic, given how hard she'd worked to keep me in a child's place. I agreed, but this time I didn't show up empty-handed. I walked into their living room with a neat folder in my bag, printed bank statements, loan servicer emails, phone company records. My father was in his recliner, my sibling on the couch, and one of my enabling aunts parked in a chair like a witness for the prosecution. My mother started before I'd even sat down. You're abandoning us, she said. We sacrificed everything for you, and now you're trying to make us look like thieves. Her voice trembled with outrage, perfectly calibrated for an audience. I waited for her to finish, then opened the folder. I'm not trying to make you look like anything, I said. I just want us all to be clear on what actually happened. I laid out the statements showing how much I'd paid over the years, then placed the actual bills beside them. The gaps were obvious. She snatched one page up, scanning it. I must have miscalculated, she muttered, color rising in her face. It's not that big a deal. Mom, it's the same miscalculation every month, I said quietly. My siblings shifted when I pointed out the charges for their phone and extras that my share had covered. My father mumbled, it's not as bad as it looks, but the numbers didn't care how it looked. You didn't support me, I said, meeting her eyes. You billed me with interest for having you as parents. She snapped, families don't nickel and dime each other. Exactly, I answered. That's why I'm done being your income stream. I could see them gearing up for another round of excuses, so I drew a line. Let me be clear, I said. I'm not asking for anything back, even though honestly I could. I'm just telling you I won't be paying another cent through you. If there's ever a real bill with my name on it, it can come directly to me. My mother's face twisted. You are tearing this family apart, she yelled. Over what? A little money. My sibling rolled their eyes. It was just a few dollars, they muttered. You're being so dramatic. I tapped the stack of papers between us. This is not a few dollars. And this is not about the money, it's about control. I let the words hang there. From now on, any financial conversation goes through official channels, not guilt trips. If you ever genuinely need help, you can ask transparently, and I'll decide. I won't be coerced anymore. My mother shook her head, already crying angry tears. My aunt stared at the carpet. My father avoided my eyes completely. I didn't lose my family today, I said quietly, more to myself than to them. I just stopped pretending people who steal from me are my family. I gathered the documents back into my folder and stood up. I'm going low contact after this, I said. If there's ever an apology and an acknowledgement of what actually happened, we can talk. Until then, this is where things stay. Then I walked out, leaving the ledger on the table in their silence. The days after that meeting were loud, even in the silence of my apartment. My mother's voice filled my voicemail with sobs. You're breaking my heart. I don't even recognize you anymore. after everything I've done. When the tears didn't work, the texts turned mean. Don't bother coming back when we're dead. You'll regret this when we're gone. I blocked her on everything except email, leaving one narrow door open for genuine emergencies and closing the rest for my own sanity. My father called once, his voice low and weary. "You know how your mother is," he said, as if that explained everything. "Can't you just be the bigger person?" I was the bigger person, I told him. For years. I paid and kept quiet. Now I'm just being a person with boundaries. He didn't have much to say after that. Life didn't magically get easier, but it got clearer. Every time a bill came straight to my inbox with my name on it, I felt a small, steady relief. No more middleman, no more screenshots, no more mystery totals. Just me, my responsibilities, and no one else's hand in my pocket. Once the automatic payments to my parents stopped, it was strange how quickly the numbers in my account started to look different. It wasn't like I suddenly became rich, but there was space where there hadn't been any before. I set up a small emergency fund and watched it grow in tiny, stubborn increments. I paid down my actual debt faster. I even said yes to a cheap weekend trip with friends, the kind I used to turn down because things were tight, without admitting why. The change in my anxiety was almost physical. That constant background hum of dread, the one that flared every time my phone buzzed with a message from my mother, started to fade. Bills still stressed me out sometimes, but now it was normal stress, not weaponized stress. My friends noticed the difference too. One night, we had a low-key dinner and game night to celebrate my new independence. They joked about adulting and budgeting, but when I finally laid out the full story, the room got quiet in the right way. "You're not crazy," one of them said. This was abuse. Just because it was wrapped in help doesn't make it less abusive. That sentence sank in deep. I started to understand what real support looked like. People who help when they can, set clear limits when they can't, and never turn their sacrifices into a lifelong bill you're expected to pay with your self-worth. It was the opposite of what I grew up with, where every favor came itemized and stamped with interest. Looking back, it still strikes me how the turning point came wrapped in my mother's anger. "If you're so smart, then pay your own bills," was supposed to put me in my place, to remind me I was dependent and small. Instead, it turned out to be the most honest advice she ever gave me. Taking control of my own bills became the line between being owned and being free. I used to think I owed my parents for every dollar they spent on me. Now I know I only owed myself a life where I'm not afraid to open my own mail. If you grew up with parents who keep a mental ledger of every meal, every lesson, every favor, I want you to hear this. Love isn't a loan with interest. Sometimes paying your own way isn't a punishment, it's the exit door. If your family has ever used money as a weapon, tell me in the comments. And if stories like this hit a little too close to home, subscribe for more conversations about the side of family loyalty people don't say out loud. You're not ungrateful for wanting boundaries. You're just finally choosing yourself.